That's right. What's going on, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of Bridging the Gap here on the Jersey First TV network. As always, I'm AJ Malillo.
And I'm Stephen Rombolo.
And as you are all, I'm sure, aware, you could get your Jersey First fix and your Jersey First content right here on Jersey First TV, on YouTube, on Vimeo. You can subscribe, hit that notification bell, get Bridging the Gap, the Nader Narrative, Real Talk with Fernando. But you can also check us out on OnNJ.com. You can get us on demand anytime as Bridging the Gap. Just look us up over there on OnNJ. And for all other Jersey First related content, you go to jerseyfirst.org where you can check out our newsletter, you can sign up to take our pledge, and you can be in the loop with all of our information. But without any further ado, after we get through all of that, Stephen, how are you? How was your week? What's going on?
We're back. It's been a week. I had a really awesome weekend this past weekend. Actually, I had the chance to meet up with a great, dear, very special friend of ours, AJ, the one and only Annabella Poland from
That's right.
Montclair State University, the general manager of award-winning college radio station 90.3 WMSC in Upper Montclair. I feel like I'm back on the airwaves when I say that. She was down here. She's actually the president of the board at CBI, so the Collegiate Broadcasting. I don't know what the I stands for, admittedly, but I thought it was ICB. Yeah, I think you're right. Beside the point, had the chance to meet up with her. It's probably the first time I've seen her since we conducted, which was the first interview that you and I actually did for Jersey First TV at this point years ago. We had the chance to rekindle with Annabella, talk about how you and I got our start in radio, which ultimately led us here to podcasting, just the continuing journey of journalism, sharing our thoughts, productive conversations. So to be able to meet up with her down here was incredible. I haven't seen her in such a long time. The station is doing well. Annabella is doing so well. So proud of us. And we actually went out. We got to watch a SpaceX rocket launch. Elon Musk is always launching rockets. I look this way because my window's right here and I can see them at night come right out of my backyard. It's crazy. He's sending a bunch of these Starlink satellites up basically every week. But this was something. Annabella is a huge space nerd. She's always wanted to see a rocket launch in person. So when I found out she was down here, we were trying to plan out what to do. And she was like, there's a SpaceX. Do you know where we can go? And I was like, absolutely. So we went out to the beach. We had a great day, got some dinner. I met a good friend of hers, Lynn, who is a professor at a school out in Ohio. Same thing, teaches radio and media. We got to connect a little bit. And it was really awesome to just connect with an old friend, an old professional friend, personal friend, and watch some satellites get launched into space. So it was really rewarding, and it reminded me of the long and incredible journey that we've had to get not just here in the digital Jersey First broadcasting space, but just here in general. And every time I see Annabella or I talk to Annabella, I always remind her that there's seldom a day where her taking the risk and the chance on us to use a public university's platform to do something really ambitious as two young college students, which is talk politics. For her taking that chance, I'm forever grateful, and I think she's really part of the tinder that ultimately sparked the flame of my youth, my young career, and I'm always grateful to her. So it was incredible to see her, and that has been probably the highlight of my week thus far. So
Yeah, for sure. Annabella obviously doing great things over there at WMSC. They just they were Marconi nominated for like the fifth time since she's been there. Unfortunately, we didn't take home the gold, but we were there, we were nominated, and that's what matters. The awards at the end of the day, they're nice and all, but just to be there is such an achievement. And to be there five times in 7 years is even more incredible.
yeah,
So yeah, Annabella's great. Is she has given so many people the opportunity to get into the profession that is radio and media, and she does so many terrific things over at Montclair State. So huge shout out, thank you. And if you want to learn more about Annabelle, you can scroll down our YouTube channel, and that episode is certainly still up there. She's a wonderful woman and a great story.
Yeah, and I found out that's the other thing. I found out so many incredible things that like once we graduate and you're like adults and you're kind of in your own spaces and you're getting settled and you reconnect like this, you have the chance to learn about each other in a different way. So I heard some crazy stories about, growing up in Argentina, her traveling back to Argentina, some job offers that she's had that she's passed up on, which I commend her for passing up on. She has a cool job and she's had some cool opportunities, but just a wonderful woman. And I would encourage anybody to go and find that episode. It was the first episode I think that you and I ever did for this show, and just learn about her. Incredible woman, incredible story. But AJ, how's your week been?
You know what? My week's been okay. We had this really big brief for school that I finished, and it was due on Monday. So that was most of my weekend, was writing that and working on that. And then it's just been recovering since then, pretty much. But nothing crazy, nothing crazy. The Student Bar Association is putting our Halloween party tonight, so that should be a lot of fun. Get to go out, hang out with all my friends over at school. So nothing nothing too nuts, but another week in the books.
And would you care to share briefly with the audience what you're going to be for this Halloween party? Because I think it's a genius costume.
Yeah,
I think you're going to
yeah.
execute it well.
I'm going as a dad on vacation, so I got my bathing suit, I got my Bermuda t-shirt, my little Tommy Bahama. I got a camera, like a disposable camera. I'm gonna walk around wearing my glasses like this and be like, "Get together, your mother's gonna want a picture of this," and just snap a photo or two, and then some slides, some long socks type of thing. Oh, I got a fanny pack, a high noon fanny pack, and a bucket hat, probably rock the Corona bucket. It's a fan favorite. So.
You are. I can say this because I've personally done it, and now there's a whole new class of people that get to do it. But it is such a treat to just be in your physical presence for moments like this. Events where there's calls for celebration and costume is when AJ is at his finest. I will
One
give
of
you
the
that.
I will never like one of the fondest Halloween memories of a young adulthood. There was one Halloween that Steven and I, when we were living together in college, we threw a party and we dressed up as mafia guys. That was so much fun. We may
Mhm.
or may not have set off a fire alarm at 2 o'clock in the morning because our smoke machine, we didn't realize would set off the fire alarm, the fog machine. And then yeah, so that was a good time, and I can't wait. I'm not a huge Halloween guy, but I'm a big Halloween party guy. I love
There's
a
a big
Halloween
difference.
party.
Big difference
Right,
between those.
right. Like I'm a big
I commend you.
Christmas guy, you know,
Always have been.
but Halloween I could do without. I like keep the costume parties in October. Like that's all I need.
I mean, listen, we'll find out a little bit later that maybe that's not the case for some of our younger friends in the state of New Jersey. They don't get that luxury.
That's true. That's true. That's a good forward look. What's the word? Foreshadow to
Yeah,
our last story. But before that, we do have a couple other stories to get to, and I think you know what I think this is a very fine place to start. It's a very Jersey place to start, and that's the Garden State Parkway and the New Jersey Turnpike. All Jersey travels start on the Garden State Parkway or the New Jersey Turnpike, and unfortunately, those tolls are going up again. They're going up 3%, according to the New Jersey Turnpike Authority, their 2024 annual budget. They're trying to raise tolls for the fourth time since 2020, up 3%. Um, obviously the news is not making anybody happy, and they're citing the reason for this toll increase is because of inflation, right? And now look, I I might maybe I will come off sounding, I don't know, naive, or maybe I'll come off sounding like I don't know anything when it comes to New Jersey Transit. But it seems like they make a lot of money year over year, and nothing really gets better about our roads. And a 3% increase because of quote unquote inflation. Guess what? Everybody has to deal with inflation, and the motorists can can ill afford to pay these tolls to begin with. Maybe $2 doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're traveling up and down the Garden State Parkway or up and down the turnpike, that adds up every single day. And motorists are already paying high, increased gas prices because of inflation. And now for the fourth time in as many years, you're talking about increasing the tolls. It just seems absolutely ridiculous to me. And if you saw market improvement on the roads, that's one thing, but you don't.
Yeah, 100%. So I think interesting to note about this, the story from News 12 provides some figures just to show you what that increase would look like for motorists. And again, to your point, it might not seem like a lot, but when you and a big part of the New Jersey Turnpike and the Garden State Parkway, we have a lot of people who commute to work every day, either from, South Jersey to North Jersey, or in and around North Jersey, or North Jersey to New York City. So you're constantly moving through these pathways that are heavily tolled. So let's say, for example, you're going, off the Clifton exit, it's going to go from a 75-cent toll to a 77-cent toll. If you're going Asbury Park northbound, $2.10 to $2.16. Same thing for Raritan southbound. Tom's River, our home exit, is going from $1.05 to $1.08. So marginal, sure, but the point is, like you said, motorists have to contend with inflation in every other aspect, and there has been no real tangible use of these funds. Like the motorists of New Jersey have not seen these improvements, come about, or make their travels any better. So to continue to move forward with these increases, I think, is a little bit egregious. And since the stories that we are reading from were published earlier today, the governor, it seems, agrees with what we have said. And he tweeted today on, now I'm going to call this the platform formerly known as Twitter. I don't like calling it X. As just a side note, but on X, Governor Murphy tweeted this afternoon, quote, "After considering the issue, I have decided to veto the New Jersey Turnpike's proposed budget passed earlier this week. I am not satisfied with the justification provided for the toll increases reflected in the budget and need more information for why the board is taking this step." So it seems, as of right now, these tolls are actually not going to go into effect quite yet. And Murphy, in what seems to be a bizarre act of, I don't know what we want to call it. Just I wouldn't expect it from him. I was not expecting him to take this initiative. I know there was some calls from some advocacy groups for him to do this, and it appears that they didn't fall on deaf ears this time. And Murphy's keeping a few cents in the motorist pockets, at least for the time being.
Yeah, and I'll say this, and maybe this is a small point, but I don't the inconvenience of a toll going from 75 cents to 77 cents shouldn't be overlooked. The fact that, if it's one thing if you have an easy pass, but now you don't have an easy pass. So it's 75 cents, the three quarters that you keep in your, cup holder is a lot easier than keeping the three quarters. You got to dig for the pennies. You're going to cause more traffic because people are going to dig in, or you're going to put a dollar there, and then the people have to give you like you know, they're gonna have to give you 23 cents in change instead of, a quarter. I It shouldn't be overlooked how inconvenient these prices increase to. For a long time, it was 25 cents, a dollar, 75 cents, 50 cents. Just at least keep them at round numbers. Like, I don't think that that's too much to ask.
I'm not even going to lie to you. That is not a point that I considered. And it's a great point that you make. I could not imagine being the toll worker, maybe sitting somewhere around like the Union toll, which just is a mess enough during rush hour, and trying to stress, and you're trying to count out, you know, two dimes and a nickel and two pennies, and you're trying to give out the change, and you have, a line as far as you could see of angry, frustrated New Jerseyans stuck in traffic, which any of us are all too familiar with, are not the most pleasant people. So you make a great point, and I would petition that to the governor as well. Listen, if you're going to increase them, if you're going to approve this increase, at least tell the New Jersey Turnpike Association to keep them around for everybody's sake.
No, I genuinely, I think it's ridiculous. And then what about the tolls that are like only change tolls? What are you gonna? You can't even get change at that point. Like you're gonna have to deal with whatever you get thrown in there. It's just, I just don't see that it works. It just seems not fair in like a lot of different aspects. But anyway, the next story I think is a little bit bigger, and that's the fact that
Yes.
Newark has been named the worst place in the country for renters. Basically, Forbes advisors released their rankings of the best and worst cities in America for renters, and Newark ranks dead last among the nation's 96 largest cities. They crunched the data from 23 metrics to determine the best and worst markets for renters, and Newark, with its combination of low incomes, high rents, high crime, and small apartment size, earned a 0 score in the survey, dropping below Hialeah, Florida, as the city that offers renters the least bang for buck. The other bottom five were San Bernardino, California, Anchorage, Alaska, Los Angeles, and New York City. Um, the survey found that 55% of Newark residents spend more than 30% of their monthly income on rent, and the median family income in Newark is $32,000 a year. So any rent increase eats into money that is set aside for other essentials like food, clothing, and healthcare. When you compare that to cities in the top five, there's cities like Henderson, Nevada, Plano, Texas, and Austin, Texas, um, and then Chandler and Gilbert, Arizona. Chandler, when you're looking at it, the median family income is 91,299, so about triple Newark's. But um, the rentals were only 44% of the Chandler's residents' income, more than I'm sorry, only 44% of the Chandler's residents spend the 30% of their income that over half of the Newark residents spend. So the percentage of rent to income in Chandler is a lot lower than it is in Newark, which helps it become one of the best cities, even though those incomes are higher. So basically, this article goes on to talk about why the rent is increasing. And one of the things that it cites is that these major companies are coming in at during the 15 years before the coronavirus pandemic, rents rose 66%. But since the coronavirus pandemic, um, I, excuse me, let me backtrack. So 66% rent increases before the coronavirus pandemic, and household incomes rose only 24% over that time. So a 66% rent increase to a 24% household income. And during the time and since the COVID pandemic, what you're seeing is that these um, LLCs and these big companies are coming in and they are buying these major Newark residential real estates and they're driving up the rent rates. And most of the investors of these LLCs are people that don't live in Newark, aren't from Newark, and they're just coming in and they're buying up all of these areas and then driving up the rent for these areas. And the people that live there can't compete. The city's been trying initiatives to build more low income housing, but it's just not working and it's not working fast enough. And I think that this is a trend that you see across the country in real estate. It's that these LLCs, these companies, these major um, funded by major players, they go in and they buy up all of the property and they build houses and they rise the rates, and then people can't afford to live there. They can't afford to put houses to begin with because you're competing with a major organization. And then you can't afford to rent places either because the rent is increasing at a much faster rate than wages are increasing in the country. And it's not just a Newark problem, although this story centers around Newark. You're seeing this across the board in the country. And I just think it's it's an indictment on the it's an indictment on a lot of people blame late stage capitalism for this, because you're making the housing market a very capitalistic entity because people are making all of this money off of these rent off of rent, and you don't and these companies don't want people to buy houses because then they lose that stream of income. But the American one of the facets of the American dream has always been to own a home. That's like a starting point for a young American entering adulthood is buying their first home, and that opportunity is being ripped away from Americans across the country. And Newark is just one example of many.
So I think this is to the point that you just made. There's a great quote. Tony Soprano said, "quote Buy land, AJ, because God ain't making any more of it." And but that's exactly, these investors have taken that to heart, and there's obviously a lot of points to address. I think for me, when I was reading this article, what stuck out to me most was exactly what you said: the disparity between income and rent. And I think that statistic again is just worth mentioning. So 15 years prior to the COVID pandemic, rent rose 66%, but household incomes only rose 24% during the same period. So you're talking about a 42% disparity between those two figures. That is not a negligible amount of money. What I will say is that Rutgers, I'm reading because the study was put out by the Rutgers Law School. How you doing? um, but in August, the Newark City Council has put out these two ordinances to try and rein in these, skyrocketing rent rates. And I interestingly just covered this concept this past week in my contracts class, so I can apply it a little bit here. But one of the ordinances allows residents to challenge rent that they consider to be unconscionable, even though there is zero like clear legal definition as to what unconscionable is. And there's been some commentary specifically about that statute because it further accentuates the point that sure, you're giving these residents an opportunity to go and fight these ridiculous rent prices. However, these same people who can barely afford to be housed are certainly not going to have the resources to afford adequate representation as they are trying to fight these allegations in court that their rent is too high. So you're creating a pathway, but that pathway is limited by the same thing, and that is ultimately, a person's financial situation. Um, Newark has also taken steps. They invested about $20 million to create housing for families that are, making, I think the number is $32,000 annually or less. And they're trying to expand that program. But all of these things are not quick moving. There's many hurdles in the way. And there's a clear, like you said, capitalist interest. And unfortunately, in this country, if there's a capitalist interest, it's basically always going to get the right of way over whatever the competing interests are, which I would agree, as you said, is a sad. You didn't say this, but this is my opinion on it. It's a sad take on late stage capitalism, that we're having housing crises and people, can't afford to be housed, especially in a metropolitan area like Newark that has suffered for so long from policies like this that just effectuate a cycle of I'm going to call it oppression on people who are impoverished and don't allow them the opportunities to really contest their conditions adequately. So how do we solve this problem? I don't think that anybody has a really great answer because there are too many competing interests. And like you said, the fact that a lot of these companies that are coming in and buying these properties are LLCs, it's hard to really, pin down who is responsible, who are the people that are coming in and doing these things. And I'm sure, as you are well aware, when you're dealing with LLCs, the rules are very different. And the fact that there isn't rent control, I believe there's only 30% of the city's housing units are under rent control. So that's something that needs to be addressed as well. We have to do better to make sure that these people can afford to simply be housed. And we're talking about just rent. We're not talking about the other things that you mentioned: food, clothes, healthcare, utilities. If you're taking public transportation, making sure you can afford all of those things. The cost of living, and we've seen this since COVID, has just increased in just about every imaginable facet. But I believe that there's a duty on the government, local, state, federal, whatever, you know, jurisdiction you want to take, to make sure that people can, exist reasonably and live within those means, and that, everything sort of stays proportional. That disparity of 42% between the increase in rent and increase in incomes is just a staggering statistic to me, and I think is really indicative of a larger problem in our society, that, you know, price of goods, price of homes, price of rent, all of these things continue to increase, and wages do not necessarily match that. And we're finding out now how big of a problem that is. And if we don't address it, if we don't get ahead of it, or at least try to, uh, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, and I think this is a big part of this, and I'm not gonna pretend that I know how to fix this answer, or fix this problem, or like have an answer to this problem. But I think a big thing is the fact that a lot of these investors and a lot of these people buying these properties are not from Newark and they're not from the area. And I think that that's an important thing because when you're from somewhere, when you live somewhere, you have to have a pride in your community. You have to be be you're a member of that community. You care about that community and the schools and the buildings and the way people live around you. And there has to be some way that to address this problem of these outside investors coming in, buying the place up, and not really caring at the end of the day what happens to it. There's no deeper rooted ties that date them back to the area, and there's nothing that keeps them there because they don't live there. Their kids are schools. They're not walking the streets. They don't care about the crime. They don't care about any of it. They just care about the fact that they keep making money, so they keep raising the rent. I think what you saw at one time in the country when cities were at their peak is that the people that owned those buildings lived in those buildings. They cared about those buildings, right? And so, yeah, maybe not everybody was always able to afford a home or buy a condo or whatever. People always had to rent apartments and live in places as renters for a long time, if not their whole lives. But guess what? Their landlords owned the building and they cared about the building. And they made sure that the building was good, and everybody around them cared about the building and the environment and the neighborhood and the town because everybody there was trying to do it. And sure, maybe the guy that lived on the top floor in the penthouse apartment was richer than all of the people that lived below him. But guess what? He was living in the building. His kids were going to the same schools. He was walking the same streets. So he cared about all of that.
And I think that's a really great point too. And I think that's something that the legislature, whether it's the city council in Newark, or if this is happening elsewhere, where this is happening elsewhere, I should say, can take into their own hands. And I believe that they could put in provisions that state, if you're going to be, you know, buying up these large parcels and developing these things, you should have to give back to the community in some meaningful way. You should have to contribute, because I mean, this is kind of like a historical thing. Is when, capitalists see an opportunity to make money, they are absolutely down to go travel, whether it's out west for the gold rush, or down south post slavery, to come make their money, but contribute nothing to the culture, the community, the places where they are living, the quality of lives for the people. They're just kind of there for the dollar, and then they're out. And again, it's another just unfortunately sad and predatory function of the capitalist system. And it is really unfortunate that it affects land and housing, which I'm of the opinion is a basic human necessity, is something that everybody should have a right to. Safe housing. We live in a country where it's certainly possible to make sure that everybody is at least adequately protected from the elements. So to treat it as this commodity where you can kind of come in, get a bunch of your buddies together, buy up an apartment, charge whatever you want for it, make your money, and owe no duty or due diligence to the community or the people that you are housing is a little ridiculous to me.
So I do have to push back a little bit because I think that, you mentioned this indictment of capitalism, and you mentioned the gold rush and then going down, and it's like, well, you look at these places from what they were before to what they are after. You're talking the gold rush, you're talking Los Angeles and San Francisco and Sacramento and some of the greatest cities on planet Earth, right? And the all of the wonderful things that we live and enjoy with today is thanks to the capitalist system. So I do have to push back on that. The creation. Now, where I agree with you though, and what I think is lacking about about the society that in which we live, especially today, is that we have neglected the duty that we have to our fellow man, right? The thing about capitalism, like economic system, great, grand, 100%. I'm with a free market. I think that the free market system is the best system, but we have to remember this fact about any economic system. They are tools, they aren't ends. They are means to get to something. They are not the end, right? I think that a capitalist system builds the best things, produces the best goods, 100%. Does a lot of good for the people that are able to create and develop and produce, and then all the people that reap the benefits of that production. But it's not everything. The free market isn't the end of culture. What you have to have in order to have a thriving free market that is the best for everybody around you is a culture of exactly what you said. Culture that you have to remind yourself that you have a responsibility for your fellow man, the people around you. That it's not just about the dollar, it's about what that dollar does for you and everybody else around you. It's not I don't like putting it as an indictment on an economic system, because guess what? It doesn't matter the economic system. I I don't I don't really think that there's a I don't know. I don't like putting morality on the system itself. You should put morality on the people in the system, in any system that is, right? We have to have a moral ethos and creed if we're going to get anything done. And so you have to bring that morality back.
I think that's a fair point. I see. I'm comfortable imposing, sort of moral fixture on the system. However, this particular situation, I'll concede. I do agree that the responsibility is bigger on the individual participant. How they're choosing to participate and and engage with that system. And I listen. I'm not going to say that I'm immune to the allure of the proposition, the idea that you can go out and if you have the credit or the ability or the friends or the money to buy one of these units, and if there really is no way that these things are rent controlled and the city doesn't have these ordinances in place, I I think anybody given the chance would be as opportunistic as they can be. I think there has to be reason in that, though. And when we are facing a crisis and a condemnation, like this Forbes article points out, that this is one of the worst place to rent, then things need to change. I'm okay if you want to go and you want to make a couple bucks and this is how you make your money. Okay, fine. But when it becomes when it's working against the people that it is supposed to provide a basic necessity of human life to, then it's a problem. And I think that the conditions in Newark and the numbers that we've been talking about indicate that it is time for a change. And to sound like I'm saying Newark and the city and the officials haven't done anything. They have. That's been clearly demonstrated. I just think that we need to keep chipping away and figuring out exactly what the right thing to do to properly address this issue is, because New Jersey, we are home to a lot of great things. We have a lot of great culture, a lot of great people, and this is a stain right now on what is otherwise a remarkable city, a place of true diversity and inclusion. And in my opinion, one of the coolest places you can go to in the state. There's so much to offer in Newark. So we got to do better. We have to be better. And I'm excited and to see how this comes out. And I will add, as ambiguous as it is, I think that the ordinance that the city council passed that allows residents to go and argue that their rents are unconscionable, I think that's a great first step, because you're putting the power in the hands of the people who are affected the most. And if you want to affect change in any meaningful way in almost any given situation, power to the people is something that I will always be in support of. So I'm sure that the law school at Rutgers, which seem to be materially involved in producing these studies, could maybe work to provide some resources for, those people that do need to go and make these arguments that necessarily can't afford adequate representation. This might be a good opportunity for, a great clinic or some sort of community program for them to get involved in. So I think there's a lot of great ways to solve this. It's just going to take some, creativity, a lot of hard work, a lot of persistence, but that's what we do in New Jersey.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better. I think that's right. But Steve, we got one more story to wrap us up.
We do. We
And
do.
this story comes out of 10 schools in New Jersey's South Orange and Maplewood School District. And basically, Dr. Ronald G. Taylor, who's the superintendent of the district, sent in a letter to the parents saying that Halloween would not be celebrated during school hours. The decision was, the letter said, an effort to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion meaningfully. They said that, there are families that don't celebrate Halloween or can't afford elaborate costumes. So this is an effort to be more inclusive towards those students. Parents weren't too thrilled about this, and neither was Governor Phil Murphy, who took to X to tweet, seriously, we can't let kids celebrate Halloween. Give me a break. Um, a bunch of parents on Facebook were buzzing and reigniting the same tense discussion that began weeks prior after Murphy had said that. Now, this is an area that went overwhelmingly towards Governor Murphy in the last election. Um, and basically, discussions over the recent years of efforts to tackle racial inequality and improve diversity in South Orange and Maplewood schools, which have about 7,200 students. This is part of the plan to do that. The district is in the midst of an integration plan that has changed how students assigned to elementary schools in an attempt to reduce education segregation and improve outcomes for Black students. And Dr. Taylor said that school principals surveyed were overwhelmingly in favor of discontinuing Halloween celebrations, and that they'll do a fall or harvest festival on October 31st instead. So, Steve, what do you think? Are you on the side of Governor Murphy, or are you thinking that the school district has a point?
So I want to toe this line carefully here. I'll say first, when I came across the governor's tweet, I was surprised because, Murphy has been quite the leader of liberal ideas. And this seemed like something that I could see him getting behind. And when I saw his, at least what appears to be outrage at this decision, I was shocked, because just simply not what I expected, given his track record on social issues and supporting these kinds of initiatives. And I will also say that, on the points superintendent made about inclusion, kids that can't necessarily afford costumes, I understand, I empathize with it. However, I think it's completely ridiculous. I think that Halloween is one of those celebrations, at least when I think about my childhood and Halloween, that was probably like the most fun part of the first, like the first quarter of school, because you get to be something else. You get to be somebody else. In my perspective, it's a way for kids to be imaginative, to put on a costume, to be theatrical, to, sort of break the chains of whatever social structure you're living in school, just for a day. And not for nothing, it's fun going out and like planning a costume. If you can't buy one, making a costume. And I think that the school kind of took a really, cheap way out of it by scrapping the whole thing together. Why not, take some of this time and, have workshops for kids who can come in and, we can make costumes at the school. And it's a way for teachers to get involved and continue to build relationships with students and show students, what, you can be creative, because not only are you coming up with your costume, but you're making it. And making something, even as an adult, to make a really delicious dinner is fulfilling. To go and, make a costume for yourself is fulfilling. It feels good to create with your own two hands something for yourself. And if we can instill that in a child, even better. So this is a great opportunity to do that for those kids that, might not have the resources at home. I think the celebration in itself is incredible. I know when I was a student at Eastover Elementary, we actually used to go around to all the different classrooms, and it gave the teachers a chance to decorate their classrooms and put up a theme, and you learn about all these different, scary stories, and you get to see your favorite characters and all these other things. It's imaginative, it's fun, it's everything that I think childhood, it really is about. And to just boil it down and not even give the kids a chance to experience that amongst their peers and reduce it to a, what they call it, a fall festival. It, I don't know. I can't see it going that far. I think that they're robbing these kids of something that, for my experiences, and I would imagine the experiences of plenty of generations before me, has been the source of great memories, fun, laughs, and an opportunity to be creative and get out of your shell. So I see a lot more benefits to allowing students to dress up. And I'll add, there was a comment in the article about how some students would feel, I think it was like anxiety or stress, or they'd be scared at the costumes. I don't know what's changed since I was in elementary school, but kids were not showing up in these like incredibly gory and like truly frightening costumes that it was anything to be afraid of. So maybe our children now are just kind of a little too sheltered, and is like a Michael Myers mask really going to scare you if a kid shows up wearing one of those? I don't know.
It also, like, isn't that the point? To be acting like being scared is so bad. It isn't a bad thing. You should be scared. It's Halloween. That's the whole point. You should be scary. I remember one of my favorite things. It was actually a friend's house. Our friend's dad would like dress up. He put a mask on, like the Jason mask, and he would sit outside, and he would just sit there still until kids would come up to trick or treat, and then he would jump up and scare them. It's classic. It's great. It's funny. Everybody laughs. The kid maybe sheds a tear, and then they take the mask off, and it's, oh, it's Mr. B. Whatever. Like, it's fine to be scared. That's the point of Halloween. Good, good. Be scared. That's not bad. You don't run away from bad things and scary things. That's what you're supposed to learn. That's part of the thing. And I have to echo Governor Murphy. Give me a break. Look, okay, I get it. You're trying to be inclusive and wonderful and nice. And look, do we want kids to feel welcome and belonging? Absolutely. But this is where you lose people, my man. This is where you lose people. This is where you take it all too far. Halloween? Really? That's what's got your pants in a bunch. Halloween. If you're so these kids like not having a costume or something like that, like you said, Stephen, make it art class. Okay, maybe you make your rule. You can't bring your own costume. Art class is going to be making costumes. Everybody makes their own costume in art class. Fine. Okay, whatever. I don't care. That's good. Kids are creative, and they'll come up with things. Good, perfect, great, grand. Okay, but to take it away just seems ridiculous, and it seems, quite frankly, um, un-American. You know what? I'll say it. It seems un-American to me. America, Halloween is part of the fabric of America. It is.
That's the quote
It's
of the
something that
episode.
it's one of the things that makes America so beautiful. Trick or treating? Are you kidding me? Everybody knows. Talking about, okay, we go back to talking about a little capitalism. You know which houses give out the full size candy bars. That's where you go, right?
True.
You go, you make a beeline to the houses that give the full size candy bars. You go to school and you have your costume, and some kid might have an elaborate costume. But guess what? The costumes that I remember the most growing up aren't the ones that mom and dad went out and bought me. They're the ones that I made with mom and dad. Those are the Halloweens that I remember the most. Or the ones that you put together because you're 15 and you don't care about Halloween anymore, but it's dressing up at school, so everybody else is doing it, so I'll throw something together, see what I got in my closet.
Hmm.
That's fun. You're robbing it. You're robbing fun. You are the killer of fun, Superintendent. How does that make you feel?
I I wanna add to this. I also think the point about inclusion is worthy of a little bit of discussion because I know a lot of schools have made the transition. When we were growing up, I know for a fact, at least where I went to school for elementary and middle school, we always had Christmas celebrations, and the war on Christmas is not new. Um, but I think that as much as I, you know, disagree with it, has more validity. There's more weight to that claim because there are some people who genuinely, you might be Jewish, you might be of the Muslim faith, like you genuinely might not participate in Christmas. So I can understand a school, taking that approach and making that, like the winter, celebration or whatever we're going to call it, a holiday celebration. Fine. I had some quite diverse friends growing up from, varying religions, varying experiences, varying cultures. Halloween was never one of those holidays where, my Muslim friends growing up or my Jewish friends growing up were like, "Oh, we can't dress up. We're not allowed." And I'm speaking from my personal experiences. It seemed, to your point, one of those ones where everybody kind of just for a night put it all away, got spooked a little bit, got to eat some of their favorite candy. You laughed at a funny costume, and maybe you got scared. And there's some memorable moments to be made. And I laughed when you said it, but I'm going to agree with you. I think it is un-American. I think you're robbing these kids of what has always been a great time in school, something to look forward to. And shame on what's his name? I want to say his name just so I know. Shame on Ronald G. Taylor, the superintendent. Shame on you. I hope you get. Actually, I hope you get so many trick or treaters. I hope that Halloween is just people come
Mostly trick.
flooding. Yes, all tricks, all tricks, no
All tricks,
treats
no
for
treats.
Dr. Ronald Taylor.
No treats. He doesn't get any treats. Yeah, no,
Nah,
I agree. I agree. Mischief night, watch out, don't do anything, don't no property damage, but a little TPing of a house never hurt nobody.
hey,
That's all I'm saying.
hey,
Some toilet paper on a guy's, tree never hurt nobody.
it makes it spooky. It's festival
That's
time.
right. That's right. Look, I think that that's a fine place to wrap up. Like the war on Halloween, it must go. Um, I think it's, Halloween, scary times and scaring kids, and it's so much a part of growing up, and to rob kids of that is just mind-boggling to me and ridiculous. And I really it's a strong distaste, and it's just an example as to why people are so like so much against these like DEI initiatives, because half of them make no sense. They just go too far. You're just like, yeah, yeah, okay, we want everybody to feel welcome here. Everybody's on the board there. But then it's like, no Halloween. Oh, you're not allowed to, you know, have a Christmas party at your office. Like, just stop taking it so far. And people won't be as mad at you. I don't know why that's so difficult to understand.
Yeah, my final thoughts on this. I agree with you. I think the wholesale condemnation of Halloween is ridiculous. I think flipping it and labeling it as this like fall festival thing, in my mind, they're always two distinct things, right? You could go and you could do your apple picking and your pumpkin carving, right? And like those are fall things to do. Fall and Halloween are two distinct things. I never thought of Halloween as being this incredibly and overtly discriminatory holiday, that there's people who can't participate in it, that there's people who refuse to do it, and this, that, or whatever. It's a ridiculous notion. Let the kids give each other a spook, let them go run around the school, visit the other teachers' classrooms, read a scary story, put on a funny costume, and be kids. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is about. Letting kids be kids and have those experiences that I look back on, I'm certain you look back on, and so many people like us and much older than us look back on with great fondness. Do not rob the children of that.
Couldn't have said it better myself, but Steven, this has been another episode of Bridging the Gap. Check us out on Jersey First TV, and we'll talk to you next week. Everybody have a good week.